So I am incredibly pleased to have folks joining us today. I am Denise Jess, the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Council of the Blind and Visually Impaired. And if you've been with us all 3 days, you probably know that by now. So I am just delighted that we've had such an excellent turnout for Advocacy Days this year again in our virtual format. And I'm very hopeful that our information that has been shared both on Tuesday with an overview of the state budget, our advocacy priorities, and some very concrete advocacy suggestions has been very motivating for you. TR Williams' presentation yesterday from the Department of Health Services I thought was excellent, and really appreciate TR's work within that department to bring an equity and inclusion lens to the work that they're doing. And I'm super excited for you to hear from Tia today about work that's being done to make our state websites accessible. So without too much ado, I want to just pause and remind folks about the council's work on website accessibility. So we talked about this on Tuesday. So as a very brief refresher, some of the work that we are focused on is working with state agencies, and in this case, we're going to be talking with the Department of Administration, to increase the screen reader accessibility of state websites. And this feels very important because our state websites have critical information that we as people with vision impairment, and just in general as residents and citizens of the state of Wisconsin, need to have access to and deserve to have access to our government. So you may find that you need to go on to the Department of Health Services website to get information about COVID. There was quite a need for that, and to register for a COVID vaccine. And those vaccine websites were often very inaccessible for those of us with vision loss. Or you may need to go to the Department of Health Services to learn more about the Office for the Blind and Visually Impaired and how to contact, a rehabilitation specialist in your area. You may need to go to the Department of Workforce Development's page to get connected with a DVR counselor for seeking employment or building your job skills, or to file for unemployment on that website. Or you may want to go to the Department of Transportation's website to be able to give feedback on the state transportation plan, or go to the Wisconsin Elections Commission website to be able to register to vote, or to check your registration, or to find out if your polling place has moved. So and those are just a few things that come to mind for me. So there's, and when we encounter those things and they're not screen reader accessible, or they don't have good contrast for those who are not using screen reader and who are using magnification and contrast, we lose vital access to information that can make a difference in the quality of our lives. So last summer, the council, we reached out to the Department of Administration, and Tia will tell you a little bit about what that department does, to have some conversation about increasing the accessibility of state websites, and had a very productive conversation with them, and very high interest on their part about this accessibility issue. They already were working on it and putting plans in place. As you can well imagine, the state websites and making those changes is complex and takes time. So because we had a conversation in July, does not mean that all state websites are now accessible. There's a lot of heavy lifting that needs to happen. And some state agencies, frankly, were better at it and more attentive from the get-go. The Wisconsin Elections Commission really stands out for me as exemplary in the creation of an accessible website. You can do just about anything you need to using a screen reader on that website. And as soon as any of us would encounter a screen reader issue, I would contact the Wisconsin Elections Commission and their team would start working on it. So highly, highly responsive. But the Wisconsin Elections Commission is a very small agency. It has 35 employees, so they can make changes quickly. Someplace like the Department of Public Health or the Department of Health Services, TR mentioned yesterday that there are thousands of people working there, and they have many, many websites. So that change happens more slowly. So Tia today will give us an update on where those changes are at and what the Department of Administration's role is in supporting those changes taking root. The other thing that I mentioned on Tuesday, and I want to circle back to it now, is that the websites that are associated with the governor's office and with the state assembly and the state senate, where you might want to go to be able to find who your representatives are using that search engine, or if you're following a particular piece of legislation that's really interesting to you or important to you, you can use that website to track the bill status when it's had a public hearing or going to have a public hearing, when it's going to either the Senate or the Assembly floor to take action, so that you can keep track of that and contact your representative about that bill. That website has some very serious accessibility issues, both for screen reader usage and for contrast. And really important to know that the Department of Administration, so Tia and the folks that she works with, do not have oversight on those websites. They do not have the authority to say to the state legislature, can we make this more accessible? So that will be a piece of advocacy work that the council will be taking on starting this summer. It's a great time for us to do that because the legislature is not in session. So the demands on people's times have shifted for state legislative workers. So we want to open up those conversations to see how we can support greater accessibility, because as folks who are residents of the state of Wisconsin and who are advocates, as each of you are, you again have a right to have access to that information and a right to have access to your legislators and to your government. And we want to do the work to make that more accessible for all of us. So just so if you have questions about those websites, just to know that Tia is not in a position to answer questions about the state legislature's site. So without further ado, I am excited to turn the floor over to Tia to introduce herself, tell you a little bit about the Department of Administration, because unless you're kind of in the busyness of state government, you're like, what in the world does the Department of Administration do anyway? I didn't even know that was a thing. So she'll tell you a little bit about that and then share some background and updates about their web accessibility work. So Tia, the floor is yours and warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Denise, for such a great introduction. So once again, hello, and thank you so much for welcoming me here today. My name is Tia Ledvina, and I serve as the Web and Forms Manager for the Department of Administration. To give you just a little bit of oversight about what the Department of Administration does, we have several key functions. One of them is to help the governor develop and implement the state budget. We also support other state agencies and their programs by offering services like centralized purchasing, financial management, and also personnel management services as well. The ultimate goal of our programs is just to offer Wisconsin residents the most efficient and high quality state government services as possible. And of course, one of those things is to ensure that our services are accessible to all of our residents and all of our citizens, no matter what their abilities may be. My role here at the Department of Administration is to oversee the DOA's public and internal websites, such as doa.wi.gov, wisconsin.gov, dpm.wi.gov, and many, many others. I also maintain and manage all of the DOA's forms, both public and external, which generally involves ensuring records retention, proper formatting and accessibility, as well as maintaining just a general list of all of our forms. While I don't consider myself an expert in accessibility by any means, I am learning a lot as I grow in my career, and opportunities to discuss accessibility with people that actually benefit from these efforts is a really big win for me. So I'm excited to provide an update on my efforts to make DOA's websites and forms accessible to people with disabilities and how our efforts are spilling over into other agencies. The very first piece I'd like to discuss is website accessibility. To begin with, I'd like to give a brief overview of how our external sites, such as doa.wi.gov, are managed and maintained. Many agencies within the state of Wisconsin work with a vendor called NIC Wisconsin that creates templates for agencies to use for external websites. This means that NIC handles many of the technical requirements for websites to ensure compliance. They work with the templates. They work to ensure that the templates stay up to date with WCAG 2.0 guidelines and provide us with resources to ensure that we are using the templates to the best of our knowledge. Many of the other requirements, such as alternative text, utilizing headers correctly, and other content-based requirements rest with our website authors. Over the last 6 months, I've worked with both our legal team and several people within our agency to develop a website training for authors. The training is intended to teach people how to ensure their content is accessible on our websites. Topics covered in this training include things like the proper usage of alternative text, how to make hyperlinks accessible, using headings properly, and guidelines about color and contrast. These elements assist in creating accessible environments by properly communicating content to screen readers as a seeing person might interpret the page. This training was developed using the WCAG 2.0 guidelines and is intended to give people with no previous knowledge of website accessibility guidelines the tools to ensure their content is accessible to everyone. The training launched in early March and has received positive feedback from those who have taken it. It is available statewide and will be a required course for authors to take each year to ensure compliance and continue to provide content that is accessible to everyone. With the advent of this new training, it is the intention that these new skills will be applied to many areas of daily interaction, not just websites. The topics covered in the training can also be applied to creating accessible PDFs, emails, and internal websites. It is also our hope to expand these types of trainings to include more detailed information, including giving authors a better understanding of what NIC does behind the scenes to make websites accessible. Other accessibility trainings we plan on creating include creating accessible Word, Excel, PDF, and PowerPoint documents, as well as training on making accessible meetings, presentations, social media, and maps. This advanced training will also be available to all agencies. In addition to creating website templates, NIC Wisconsin has also assisted the state with the creation of a new forms platform called AccessGov. This platform is our next step in both modernizing the state's processes and how we interact with citizens, but also helps us to create forms that are significantly more accessible than Word or PDF forms. AccessGov is a low-code, easy-to-use platform that can easily create online accessible forms. The Department of Administration has begun moving forms into this new platform, as well as several other agencies. AccessGov provides many advantages not previously seen with Word and PDF. We are able to provide online forms that connect to workflows, providing us with greater back-end flexibility and time management. We are also able to process payments through this new portal, which will create a smoother citizen experience. And every single AccessGov form is automatically compliant with WCAG guidelines to create a seamless experience for those utilizing assistive technologies to interact with the state. Requirements for form creators to make accessible content still applies, including making accessible hyperlinks and alternative text. However, much of the look, feel, and functionality of AccessGov has been standardized to ensure accessibility without the possibility for human error. Of course, these things take time, but at DOA, we are taking an AccessGov first approach. All new forms will be created within the system, and as old forms require updates, we will recommend moving them over into the new system. DOA has already launched several forms publicly, but other agencies have begun using the platform as well, including the Department of Transportation, Health Services, Natural Resources, and the Office of the Commissioner of Insurance. Because of its built-in accessibility features and the newly launched website accessibility training, this next stage of digital government will be our most accessible yet. That is everything I have, and I am looking forward to answering some questions about what you may have about everything that I've just presented. And I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys have to tell me.
Awesome. So Tia, first of all, I just want to commend this effort, because when we met with you in July, these were just kind of still formulative ideas. And, you all have hit the ground running. You're using, the highest standard with the World Wide Web accessibility guidelines for your guide. And then really taking a 360-degree approach with not only the websites, but the forms and your fillable forms. So wow, that's a lot, and that's super exciting.
I'm excited too.
Yeah, I am truly excited. So I know a couple questions that I have that other folks may have or find beneficial, and then we'll open it up to raise hands.
Great.
So how does DOA, in addition to the training that you're offering, and I'm glad to hear that's being well received, how does DOA support other state agencies? Because you can't mandate that they make things a certain way, is my understanding. Right. And how do you support other state agencies in kind of rounding that bend towards accessibility?
Yeah, great question. And it is a little challenging sometimes, only because you are absolutely correct in that we can't really mandate how they present their content. So mostly what our goal is to provide all of those, resources for them to be able to drive that themselves. So part of our support of other agencies is that I frequently connect with other people that essentially do my job, but in other agencies. And we share resources, and we ensure that everybody kind of is on the same page in terms of how we want to further our accessibility in terms of our websites. And then in regards to forms, we have a forms manager working group where we've all been trading basically methodologies and strategies for making our forms accessible. And since we have so much buy-in for this brand new system with AccessGov, we're trading a lot of really great information and trying to kind of get everybody on that same standard. So it is just a lot of discussion and just a lot of trading resources and making sure that we're actually, communicating with each other about what our processes and guidelines and best practices are.
That's exciting, because I know in advocacy work and in change management work, some of the best change management happens when people, first of all, buy in rather than being mandated to do something. And then second of all, when they are active participants. So it sounds like, if DOT figures out a really great way to do something, that they have an outlet to share that with others. Exactly. And you all learn from each other. So while some folks on this call might wish that there was just a mandate, I know from my experience, and I'm guessing you would concur, that this more collaborative model and making resources available and encouraging people to buy in has a lot more potential for sustainability.
It definitely does. And DOA strives to be a leader in terms of showing how our efforts are positive and productive, and hopefully by taking our own advice first and leading the charge, that other people will eventually buy in with us and see how well it's working. And that's kind of our strategy here.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm glad this is well underway.
Yes.
Because we've been talking too about, that we have a big election in the fall. And so the more that we have these processes really embedded into our organizations, our state agencies, then they're less vulnerable to changes in administration too. So that I'm pleased to hear that. So let's say that someone is on a state website and they are encountering lots of accessibility issues.
Mhm.
What do they do with that? How do they communicate their concern?
Yeah, I wish there was a better method, but this actually might be a good time for us to discuss how the best we can, collect that information. As I'm just kind of thinking off the top of my head, I think the best way to do this would be some sort of public vehicle to gather feedback, having a feedback form, or having, kind of a repository for that particular feedback, because I do feel a little bit sometimes like I'm in a vacuum with in terms of getting feedback from citizens, because it can be a really hard thing to do to be able to handle that sort of influx of information. So, with the advent of Access Gov and the fact that it is so accessible, I think would be a positive way to start gathering that information. And if that seems like something that is helpful, then I definitely would like to get started on something like that. As for right at this very moment, your best vehicle is to contact NIC. They usually have a contact right at the bottom of each website, in the footer information. Otherwise, emailing one of us directly within the secretary's office is also a good vehicle. Usually our I'm forgetting what her actual title is. Basically, our secretary up here will usually forward those things to me, and I can start sharing that with either other agencies who might be encountering these problems, or at least, helping to fix it on our own websites as well. And I know it's a slow process.
Sure, but that's having a form that
Mhm.
could be filled out to flag those things, because some of us know who to contact and have no problem doing that. When I run into DOT things or Wisconsin Elections Commission things, I have no problem contacting them and getting listened to. But I think someone might feel really intimidated by that or not know how to make that contact. So
Yeah.
a form is really it's an outstanding idea. Then also that emailing, your secretary's office and having that forwarded is another. And folks can also let us know that you're having some access issues,
Mhm.
and we can help, make those connections as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We're happy to do that. Can you just say what NIC is? Because I'm guessing there are a lot of folks that don't know what those initials stand for.
Absolutely. So NIC is there is a nationwide company that specifically develops e-government services, and they work with many states. So NIC Wisconsin is our basically subsidiary of the larger NIC corporation. I actually don't know what NIC specifically stands for. I know it's just their company name.
Okay.
But they are the ones who actually have created the templates for our websites, and they're the ones that handle a lot of that back end accessibility. And they are also the ones that developed the Access Gov application, which is our new online forms platform. And I am the liaison for the Department of Administration to NIC Wisconsin. So pretty much anything that goes to them comes to me. Anything that comes to me goes to them. We have a very open line of communication. And I work with lots of people over there and make sure that everything is up to standard.
Awesome. Thank you.
Of course.
So one last question from me, and then we'll see what questions are living out among our attendees today. So, the majority of folks attending this session are people that live with vision impairment or our families and friends and professionals in the field. And, it's not uncommon for us to be folks that live with multiple disabilities. So can you tell us a little bit about the accessibility building that's happening beyond vision impairment?
Sure. And some of the items that have been put into that initial training that I was talking about aren't necessarily just for for vision impairment. So things like, obviously alternative text is, but things like utilizing headers correctly. If people are using assistive technologies, if they have motor impairments or anything like that, those particular things that have been built in can help with mobile impairments, things like that, to basically skip between content headings. And there is some stuff that NIC has built into the websites that assists with those sorts of disabilities. There is a lot of stuff that they have done that I am not an expert in, and so I can't talk super long about what they have done. But some of those just content-based requirements do hit multiple different types of disabilities to ensure that they work properly with multiple kinds of assistive technologies that people use.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
course.
So let's open it up. And Lori, I'm going to turn to you. So Lori, Rebecca's our Fund Development Director, is going to help facilitate the questions. So if you have a question, feel free to either put it in the chat and we'll make sure that we address it, or use the raise hand feature. And when Lori calls on you, feel free to unmute and to speak your question. And again, putting it in the chat is an option for folks that might find speaking to be not as comfortable. So Lori, I'm turning to you.
We do have someone on the phone who has raised their hand. It's a 715 area code number. And feel free to unmute and ask your question. Okay, well, if that turns out to be a question, we can catch on to that one later. But
Lori, I'll just say *6 will unmute if you're on the phone.
Yes, great, thanks.
Yep, you bet.
In the meantime, so if someone is working on a form and realizes that it is not accessible at the moment, is there someone that they can contact immediately at DOA to actually help them complete the form?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently on each of our public forms, there should be, and I double check this every time we post, there should be a contact up in the top right-hand corner of each form. And that is the contact of whoever you should be, if you need assistance with filling out the form, if you need an alternative format, that is who you should be contacting for that particular form. They can guide you through how to actually fill out the form, or if you need somebody to just simply fill it out on your behalf, they can assist with that as well. It's usually an email, but occasionally there will be also a phone number if you are more comfortable calling.
Wonderful, thank you, Tia.
Of course.
And yes, the person who raised their hand on the phone is now unmuted, so feel free to ask your question.
Hey, Tia, this is Ramsey from Hudson, Wisconsin. And I just wanted to thank you for your hard work. Could you tell me your last name? Was that up on the phone, because I would like to send you an email and have a future conversation about disability, so you can spell your last name. That'd be great. One of the other boards, I'm as an accessibility maybe opportunities and access, and I would love to have you come present to them as well.
Ramsey, thank you so much. Ramsey's going to keep you busy, Tia. So, so I'm wondering if you could spell your name and maybe do your email address so that the two of you can get in touch.
Absolutely. So I'm going to type it, put it into the chat, and then I will spell it out as well, so you have it in both formats. So it is my first and last name at wisconsin.gov. So it is TIA with a period, LED as in dog, V as in Victor, INA at the at symbol, wisconsin.gov, and there are no spaces anywhere in there. That is my email. Please feel free to reach out to me.
Awesome, Ramsey. Did we get?
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Of course.
Awesome. Ramsey, thanks so much for your advocacy. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Another question is, do you already, Tia, have a group of beta testers, especially with AT in mind?
We actually do have some people over in DHS that have been doing some testing for us. However, I am always open to more people being part of some testing and just kind of maybe pointing out some things that need some improvement. We did have some beta testers initially for Access Gov as well from DHS that use assistive technologies as well. And those folks have pointed out several things already for us that is on NIC Wisconsin's docket for improvements. And so, yes, we have had beta testers and we've had several people go through and test live forms for us as well.
That's awesome.
Great.
And if somebody's interested in beta testing, can they just email you?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would be great. Yeah, there's something very powerful about, I know that the folks are really good on the code and building and using those guidelines. And then there's something really powerful about having those of us that are reliant on the technology to use it. And working with the Elections Commission, my suggestion to a couple of folks was use a free screen reader like Narrator. Yes. And just see what happens. And they were like, whoa, this is totally different than when I'm just looking at the code. So the more beta testers we can utilize that have that are native users, that is really awesome. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
Great. Does anyone else have questions for Tia or for Denise? I don't see any others coming in right now.
Okay, well, we'll do a couple of things that move us towards closing. And then if more come to you, it's like, wait a minute, I got it. Then, feel free to either raise your hand or put it in the chat and we'll work to address it. So first of all, Tia, I just want to as we move to closing, just thank you so much. This was an excellent presentation and really excited about the work that you all are doing at DOA to create equitable access to our state websites and forms for those of us with various disabilities. So really hats off to you. I've seen more movement in this area in the last 9 months than I have seen in a very long time. So just incredible gratitude to you and your colleagues.
Of course, I'm always happy to be part of this. Very gratifying work. It's gratifying work.
Very cool. So for all of everybody who's attending today, we'll follow up with you with sending you the PowerPoint from Tuesday. That PowerPoint is screen reader accessible, and we use really mindful PowerPoint design with high contrast and large print. So you'll have access to that document. And we'll also follow up with a feedback survey because we really value your perspective on how this went and, starting to think about what does next year look like? How might we do maybe a hybrid event with an opportunity for still the online learning? Because we know that we get folks from all over the state who are able to participate, and maybe then in the Capitol session to facilitate visits with legislators. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about now, and we'll survey you on how that how, your perspective on how that might work for you. So please take a few minutes to fill out that survey when you get it, because your feedback is incredibly helpful. And then remember that a big focus for these sessions has been to identify what's your next step as an advocate. And every step matters. So you don't have to think about it being some grand thing or something that really challenges you beyond your comfort. You can do the next best thing. We have an election coming up in August, state primaries, and then we'll have a very large election in November. Please make plans to vote for that. If you need some assistance in thinking about how to make a voting plan, we are members of the Wisconsin Disability Vote Coalition, and you can go to their website, and there is a great handout there, again, accessible, on how to make a voting plan, because we know that as folks with vision impairment, we run into unique barriers in the voting process. So please feel free to use the Disability Vote Coalition as a really valuable resource. Think about what your next step might be with reaching out to lawmakers, whether they are local or state or federal, and remembering that your local folks are often your most accessible folks because they are your neighbors. They are the folks who shop at the same grocery store you do potentially, or go to your same, social groups. So, connect with them, share with them issues that are important to you, start the conversation. That one of the last handouts or slides we did on Tuesday really focused on, those more formal meetings, the informal ones at a coffee shop, or I suppose a bar. Those are community networks in some places, or a park. So that you can start those conversations, invite them to ride the bus with you, or invite them to do a walk audit with you, go to town halls, go to forums and panels, and really get to know the issues. With your state legislators, remember that they are in district now, so you can go, have easier access to them than at the state capitol. And again, same kind of thing, invite them to do something with you, invite them to your Lions Club meeting, invite them to your low vision support group, or lunch at your senior center, or wherever you and your colleagues and friends hang out together. Invite them into your workplace and learn, have them learn about the work that you do as someone who is visually impaired. Super important for those lawmakers to see that we as people with vision impairment are employable, that we bring a lot of talent and a lot of dedication to the work that we do, because that's still for many lawmakers, they don't see us as employable. So bring your legislator to work day might be a really cool thing. Let us know what you do. So when you get that survey, if you've already got a plan for connecting with your lawmaker, let us know about that, because your idea, then it's become something we can share with other folks, in sessions like this. And that just gives other people more tools to be able to feel comfortable going and talking with their lawmakers. And remember that the buddy system is fantastic. So if it helps you to bring somebody with you, a family member, a friend, your spouse, a neighbor, somebody else maybe from your low vision support group or your senior center, so that you're going together and you can kind of tag team each other, that can often be a fantastic first step if you're feeling a little bit nervous. And remember, the last thing I'll say is that your legislators are human beings, just like the rest of us. So they go to the grocery store and they make dinner at night, and their kids are going to the schools maybe that your kids go to, or that they're going to the same kind of social events that you're going to, and they put their pants on one leg at a time. So most legislators want to get to know their constituents, want to hear your story. really, truly matters. So I will pause there to see if there are any last questions for us before we say goodbye to you. All right. And Lori, you're not seeing any in the...
Not seeing any in the chat or no hands raised right now.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So watch for some emails from us. Probably not tomorrow. I think we're all gonna rest a little bit because it's been quite a week, but in the next couple of weeks. So yes, and I just heard Kathleen's message in the chat. Thank you so much, Kathleen. She is encouraging you to sign up for our e-news. So please do that if you have not already. Advocacy e-news comes out the second Monday of the month. And remember, yesterday I mentioned that we also do advocacy alerts. So those come out as needed. So thank you so much for that. And again, remembering that our advocacy priorities are on our website as well. So thank you so much, everybody, for your attendance and for your great questions and for being a grassroots advocate. We need you to really help spread the word about the needs to promote the dignity and empowerment of the people of Wisconsin living with vision loss. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Tia. Take good care.
You too.